My name is Sho Kuwamoto. I'm Vice President of Product at Figma. So I've always loved computers. I grew up in the 70s and 80s with an Apple II and then a Macintosh and so on. And I don't know, I always just loved playing around with computers. I started programming when I was 10, and there's this feeling with computers that whatever you can imagine, you can build it. And that's just not the case with everything else. If you're in physics, you can't make stuff. If you're in chemistry, maybe chemistry, you can make some stuff. But with computers, as long as you can imagine it, you can make it pretty much. So Figma is it's a piece of software that allows people to design websites, mobile applications, desktop applications. And unlike previous pieces of software, it runs in the browser. And today, that's pretty normal. But back then, when we released it, people were pretty skeptical. So people would say, oh my God, I want to design stuff in private. I want to make sure that it's good before somebody sees it. I don't want my boss coming in and looking to see what I'm doing, And there's also this fear of people designing by committee. They said, hey, well, what's this idea of like 4, 5, 6 people getting in the same file trying to design something? It's going to be terrible, And so we faced a lot of initial skepticism. And what we did is, among all those people who were skeptical, there were a few people who were kind of interested in the idea. They said, oh, I've always wanted to work with people, always wanted design to be more collaborative. This looks exciting. And so we would hunt those people down, and we really worked closely with them to say, well, what do you want? How can we make it work for you? And so on. And we cultivated those people and made a product that really they liked. And then they became our initial champions. Some of them brought our software into their companies. And then, once it started working for the teams, and then other people would see that it was working and so on and so on, it snowballed. But getting that initial spark lit was really finding those people who really resonated with that initial idea. So when I was starting, we used to have product cycles that were anywhere from 18 months, 14 months would be very short, to 24 months and beyond. And so you would start a project and say, what are all the things we want to do? It might take 2 years. You'd make a plan, and then you would execute that plan. And then the second half of your development had to be QA, because you'd spend maybe, let's say 14 months doing development, and then you'd spend 6 months doing QA, because any bugs that were in the software, once you put it in the box, you couldn't fix them, And so, there was a certain amount of process that you had to follow in order to make sure that that your software is going to be good, and so on and so on. And the biggest change between that and the world that we live in today is, if somebody ships a bug, we can fix it tomorrow. That's the biggest change. And that means that we're much more free to experiment. We can try something, and of course we still have our processes for testing. It's mostly automated testing now, but so of course we want the quality to be good, but there is this freedom of any changes that we don't like it might not even be literally a bug. It could be that customers just don't like a behavior, or that maybe you make a change and it has some unintended consequence somewhere else, is we can fix that immediately. There's a phrase within the world of product management called product sense. And the word sounds like it's something that you're born with, it sounds like, hey, this person has musical taste. This person has, good design sense. This person, I can't redecorate my house. I need to hire a decorator because I don't have good sense or whatever. It sounds like that kind of thing. But the reality, I think, is that product sense is actually a very technical and precise idea. And the idea is that, unlike artistic sense, which is subjective, product sense is just how much intuition do I have about which products customers are going to like? And it feels a little bit subjective, but at the end of the day, once you launch something, you'll know if customers like it or not. And so if somebody says, hey, I think we should do this, and then you launch it and they're right, and then they say again, I think that they're going to like this, and you launch it and they're right, you'll actually be able to measure whether their product sense is right or not. And then the way you develop product sense is to study that. So you can study it through your own decisions. You can study it through the decisions of people in your company, right? So which things have we tried as a company that have worked? Which ones didn't work? How could I have known that? And you can even do it as a bystander. So whenever anybody launches anything that I think is interesting, like Apple launches products or Microsoft launches products or some startup launches a product, I'll look at that and say, well, what is it trying to solve? How did they design it? Let me play around with it. Do I like it? Do I not like it? Do I think it's going to work? And then I see whether it does work or not. And then that sort of provides a feedback loop where I didn't have to be the person who did all the hard work. I can just sort of write off of somebody else's hard work and say, hey, I just looked at that. I tried to make a guess as to whether it was going to work or not. And then you can sort of see if it works or not. And then you can say, well, was my guess right or not? So like another analogy is like, there are people in Hollywood whose jobs it is to figure out whether a movie is going to work or not. Or there are people in the music industry whose job it is to figure out whether a band is going to be big or not. And ultimately, the market decides whether a movie is big or a band is big, right? But you can develop your own sense of, oh, I think this movie is going to be big, or I think this band is going to be big just by watching. And it's the same with software.